Additionally, we looked at safety certification, which is a federal requirement through the Federal Transit Administration for your new starts and extensions to your railroad. You have a very mature safety certification process. We made some recommendations. We found some findings in this area. But overall, the process of safety certification is one that is, I think, built in a legacy from the initial onset of bringing rail to Portland. You've got a long history of doing certification. However, we did find some areas that we thought there could be improvement and some benefits gained through that. We then evaluated the rail operations sections, and we looked at rail operator training, which I believe currently is a 7-week course, and made some recommendations about potentially extending that for an additional week to an 8th week to provide additional enhanced training opportunities for the trainers. This is something that both your training department has suggested that they'd like to see, and it's something that your operators have also addressed also. Though 7 weeks is within the industry norm, I've seen training as low as 6 weeks and as long as 12 weeks. So though your training is very enhanced here, I think that additional week of training would bring benefit to your overall safety program. There's also a program in place in relationship to hazard mitigation and hazard identification, and how those hazards are identified via the operators or via our employees, and how that information is transmitted to the safety department and communicated forward for resolution and mitigation. Hazard analysis, hazard identification is the key of any safety department in any organization. Every organization has to focus on the identification of hazards and the elimination of hazards prior to them manifesting themselves as an accident or an incident. When you react to an accident or an incident, you are in a reactionary mode. When you're identifying hazards and mitigating them prior to becoming an accident, you're in a proactive mode, and that's the hallmark of a safety program. If you wanted to benchmark a safety program, you should benchmark it against how many hazards you identify and mitigate, not how many accidents you have. Hazard identification and mitigation is the ultimate approach, because by mitigating hazards, you reduce the potential for accidents to occur. And that's truly the genesis behind a strong and cogent system safety process. And you have the foundation here at TriMet for hazard identification. There needs to be more focus in that area and more attention given to it, but the foundation is in place and well established. Part of that hazard analysis process is your ride-along, observation check, ride check process. Again, it's the goal of your training department to do a ride check on every operator every year. That is a monumental task to be undertaken by a training department. I know of no training department in the country that takes on a burden such as that. Most ride checks are performed by independent surveyors, independent ride checkers, and they're more focused towards on-time performance and ADA compliance than they are to operational efficiency and operational performance, i.e. hazard analysis on safe activities. So again, I commend that process. It's part and parcel of, as I said, your very mature training program that you have. We also moved into spending some time with executive staff, mainly the general manager. And in spending time with the general manager, I found that whole process to be extremely unique, because in all honesty, to present to this group of individuals, I don't have a chance to talk to many CEOs. Most of the time in talking to the executive staff of a transit agency, it is relatively a begrudging process that the chief executive officer of a transit agency would devote enough time to really focus on a non-revenue generating portion of the operation, being safety. I found this process to be extremely enlightening, because we were then notified that this excellence and task force was going to be put together. And that comment came to me without any initiative on our part. It was an independently derived process that I immediately felt a lot of benefit in relationship to the proactivity of doing that versus the necessity of being mandated through a report or tasking to do that. So we spent a lengthy amount of time with executive staff in discussing the operations of this task force and the end goal, and provided commitment on my behalf that I would support the task force in any way, shape, or form that I could help you in analyzing any of the questions or answering any of the questions that you may have in the future, or benchmarking the TriMet program against any other transit agency's program in the country. We then moved from that analysis into the drug and alcohol testing side of TriMet's operations, evaluated that program against current FTA regulations that are codified in 49 CFR Part 659. We did find 3 findings in this area that generated 1 recommendation. Though the recommendation is not based in any deficiency in the application of the rule or compliance to the rule, we do think it would be an enhancement to the current program. From there, we spent time with the accident review boards and safety committees evaluating their activities and some of the output from these committees. We found again that there was proactivity in these committees. We did generate a finding with a recommendation in relationship to that recommendation in relationship to how certain committee activities are performed and how information is transmitted from those committees into staff sections. From there, safety data and reporting was analyzed. This is your ACID, the TriMet ACID system for accident reporting and incident reporting. Again, a very hardy tool. A lot of agencies don't have what is generally classified as an SMS system, a safety management system. ACID could be generally considered a safety management system. It collects and harvests information. It is available for query. It provides valuable input based on the data that you are requesting from it. And so the ACID program, I thought, was, again, a benefit to the transit agency. And then the training department's involvement is the first cut or first review for accident incident determination. Again, it's very unique within the industry. Based on the high qualifications of the training department, the uniqueness of having training involved in making that first cut on an accident incident event, I think, is overshadowed by the qualifications of the training staff. Again, not done at other transit agencies. I don't see a negative in doing it that way, mainly because the quality and the caliber of the training staff are very diligent and their jobs are very active in the agency beyond training. And so there's commendability in that. Planning and scheduling was another area we looked at. We generated a finding. It is in your report. We did generate a recommendation. We were very concerned about how planning and scheduling integrates into hazards on the road. When we cut a route, place a bus stop, what type of hazards does that generate? Lighting, crosswalk identifications, local neighborhood support, criminal activity, all of which have to be evaluated. Sometimes runs are cut without necessarily the amount of time needed for a bus operator to be able to complete that route in a safe manner. So we wanted to evaluate that. The application of the bus stops locations guide and placements guide in concert with the fact that the training department has done a very diligent hazard analysis on these stops locations comes together to create, I think, a strong program, but there needs to be improvement in the program. Bus stops placement guide doesn't accurately depict all of the operating environmental conditions that you have, nor could it. It would be very difficult to do that. But again, you've taken the first huge step by even having such a guide to begin with. Most agencies don't. However, your guide is not completely in tune with the current locations of your stops. The continued evaluation of the hazards when bus stops are placed or located or routes are cut or runs are scheduled, I think should still integrate the involvement of the training department or the safety department to make sure that we've identified all the hazards that could be associated with the placement of a stop or the location of a shelter or how a run is cut, and make sure that there's an adequate amount of time to be able to run that route in a safe manner. So we did make that recommendation also. Emergency incident communication and operator outreach was another area we assessed. We found it a little bit unique that a PIO, an information officer, is not necessarily at every event, every major event. We did make a recommendation that that should occur, mainly to be able to deal with the media and allow the transit professionals to do their job in relationship with dealing with the event as it unfolds. Information is very important to be able to get out as quickly as possible. Accurate information is even more important. And we feel that the strength of the PIO process here at TriMet is such that for major events, a PIO needs to be moved on scene as quickly as possible and really command and control all of that information. And we did make that recommendation also. In closing, we also assessed what we call general observation. And a general observation was the understaffing of the safety department. The safety department currently is staffed with seven individuals. You're in the process of trying to fill the Director of Safety and Security position. I know you're actively underway as an organization in trying to fill that position. You have 2 individuals dedicated to drug and alcohol, 2 individuals dedicated to safety certification, which effectively leaves a 3-person safety department. For the size of the organization, the Federal Transit Administration recommends that you have 1 full-time safety professional for every 175 to 225 full-time employees. To meet that ratio, you'd have to add 4 to 5 more individuals to the safety department. We're not making that recommendation. However, we do feel that the safety department currently, as it's configured, is understaffed to perform the mission that you're asking of it. It's not only the mission that you're asking of it, but it'll be the mission that you're going to task to it as an output from this task force activities. So there'll be more demands placed on that committee, or excuse me, on that department. So that is one of our general findings. In all, we had 23 findings, which summarized to 15 recommendations, of which we found 1 recommendation on the bus operations side of the house in relationship to the old bus operator rule book or the current bus SOPs. We found 1 to be a serious recommendation needing, I think, immediate attention and focus in rectifying that particular issue. Additionally, in our Task 1 report, we had 76 findings. Of those 76 findings, 31 of them were based in rules, procedures, recommendations, changes on rules and procedures, updating the SSPP and making some modifications. Some of these are soft skill tasks. They're procedural-based tasks, but then the hard skill is making sure that you take those changes and incorporate them back into the training side of the house. If there's an area that is certainly capable in relationship to the expertise that can handle these changes, it would certainly be the training department. Safety department being understaffed by our assessment, the training department is a subject matter expert-based group with a lot of involvement in day-to-day agency activities. I think there's also a lot of respect for that department within the organization too. So given our findings and given our recommendations, I think the burden is going to be squarely placed in implementing these in the training department as well as the safety department for follow-up and follow-through. With that, that summarizes both the Task 1 and Task 2 reports. I tried to keep it as clean as I possibly could and simple, and stand ready to answer any of the questions that you may have.